Recording in progress.
Thanks you very much for everything, Randy.
All right, we're going to get started in just a minute here. Let folks, if there are still folks joining us or logging on to the meeting, just give them a minute to get started before we get started. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. So we're calling the meeting to order at 6:32. And just to explain, as usual, the remote meeting and situation and how this will go tonight. We are opening right now the public budget hearing for the Grantham School District budget. And the meeting is available virtually. So I see some folks have joined us on Zoom, which is great. Thank you for joining us. We are also meeting in person. The full board is here in person, which means we do have a quorum in person. So the meeting will continue in person. If for some reason we have technology issues, but we're not anticipating any. And so the minutes of the meeting will be available if there is something that happens in terms of the technology, but we will continue with the meeting as an in-person meeting. And that same thing will happen as we move into the standard February board meeting that occurs after this budget hearing. And I'll remind everybody of all of that again then. So we are going to go ahead and open the public budget hearing for tonight. This is the public hearing ahead of our annual meeting. And so we're going to just go ahead and get started with that here. And we'll just go through some quick reminders and then we'll get started in presenting the 2022-2023 budget for the Grantham School District. So we do have a presentation that will go along with the meeting tonight, and then we will open the floor to take public input. The goal of this session is for us to be able to present the proposed budget, collect public input before the board finalizes it at our meeting to follow. So we're going to pull our presentation up here. Yes.
Sorry. What's the password?
For the Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
And if you just go to GDS guest, you should get right in.
Oh, okay. Now it's this one.
All right. Okay, so just to start things off, we just want to extend our gratitude as a board to the community, to the Grantham community, for being our collaborators and our partners as we continue to navigate the pandemic, keeping our children at the center of our work here. Just specific call outs, just thank you to the parents and guardians in town who are one of the first lines of communication and support that we receive, and we really appreciate your continued partnership with us and with the school here at GBS. Speaking of the school, thank you to our staff who just continue to show up for our students and help them to have as seamless of an experience as we can during these very unseamless, these very seamed times. And thank you to our community members at large. This is really our chance during the budget process to connect most meaningfully with our community at large and to just say thank you for supporting us, of course, financially, but also emotionally, and your commitment to helping us as we see ourselves through a transparent and informed decision-making process in all of the decisions that we take on. So just an overview of what we'll be doing tonight and then moving forward in the next month. Tonight, we're going to review the warrant articles and receive input for those. And this is really looking at the Grantham district budget, the operating budget for 2022-23. We also will be reviewing the Grantham Education Association collective bargaining agreement that was negotiated this year. And then at the board meeting to follow this, we will be discussing the grounds and playground renovation project. Next week, same time, same place, we will have the public hearing specifically for the bond relative to the grounds and renovation playground project. So while the board will be discussing the final action on that project tonight at our meeting, it will not be part of the public hearing tonight. The hearing for that will take place next week. A month from tonight, same place, same time, is our annual meeting, and that is the annual meeting when the voting will take place on our budget, on all of the warrant articles that we'll review tonight. So the budget, the collective bargaining agreement, the playground bond, etc. And then March 8th is when we have the town elections. And so for the school board, we will have 2 open positions, and we will also have 2 open positions on the board for board members. And then we will also have elections for our moderator, clerk, and treasurer. So that's just an overview of what's coming up in our very busy agenda for the next month. So for tonight, we are going to go ahead and present to you some information, and then we're going to receive input and feedback on the articles. We'll accept feedback in person. So for folks who are joining us here in person, feel free to speak to those articles. We will also accept feedback through Zoom. If you are going to provide any feedback, we do ask that you state your name and address at the beginning of your comment, so those can be read into the record as a standard procedure according to the RSAs that we follow. So for both virtual and in-person comments, we ask you to state your name and address. And any comments or questions that are typed into the chat will be read aloud as long as they have that name and address. We do ask that you try to limit those comments to less than 100 words, just so that we're able to provide opportunity for any folks who might like to comment tonight. Okay, so the first article, when the warrant is officially posted, the first article that you will see on the warrant will be the GVS grounds renovation and playground project. As I mentioned before, the board is going to discuss this at our board meeting to follow, and then we will have a public hearing for this warrant article next week. So moving on, Article 2 on the warrant will be to hear reports. Very standard and straightforward, not much information or discussion we need to have about that. It's a standard article that we see every year. And with that said, we're going to move into Article 3, which is, I imagine, everyone's thing they're the most interested in, which is the operating budget. And I'm going to hand this along to Leslie Nesbitt.
Thanks, Brittany. Article 3 will be our total operating budget, which this year comes in at $10,253,736. And we will get much more detail about this year, the budget we were proposing. Next slide is a financial overview. So these are some of the elements that make up the budget. It's important to note that these numbers will likely change based on input and decisions from tonight's hearing. So our proposed operating budget for this year, our operating budget for this year is $10,291,101, and our proposed budget for next year is $10,253,736. You'll notice that there's a small decrease of about 0.3%. The general fund budget for this year is $9,992,984, and our proposed budget is $9,968,063. Again, there's a decrease there of about $26,000, 22%. You'll note that the general fund excludes food service grants and funds for the outdoor classroom and grounds renovation playground funds. Some of the key changes in the proposed budget for next year, in addition of a 4th bus, we certainly have an increased population within the school, and we have an increased population of bus riders, especially here at GVS. A full-time special education director. We've had a wonderful and incomparable amount of recruiters serving us. And amazingly, not at a full FTE status. We are really in need of someone who can be a full-time employee. Same goes for an increase in time for our superintendent, our superhero superintendent, who again, amazingly, is not full-time status. And we're proposing to increase some superintendent time, increase that to a 0.6 FTE from 0.5. There's a real need there for, to pay our superintendent as she works. Updates to the exterior locking system and security cameras. There are additional cameras at the recommendation of an audit, and our locking systems are old and or obsolete. So we would be replacing them with updated systems. A purchase of a carpet extractor, which is just replacing one that we have. General increases throughout the budget to accommodate for increased cost of supplies. Everyone's talking about inflation and what things cost these days. We're proposing to replace the classroom FM systems. They are, I think, 12 years old and are in need of an upgrade. And then additional funds for student contracted service, such as OT, PT counseling, somewhat related to our increased population size. So the anticipated tax impact for next year will actually go down 31 cents per $1,000 value. Or $31. It's 0.31 per thousand and then $31 per 100,000 of home value. So we're proposing to take down tax impacts.
Thank you. Obviously, you can notice that the impact on the tax decrease is much bigger than the decrease that we're proposing in the budget. So I want to explain a little bit about why that's happening. That's mostly because there's a one-year tax relief from the state for the SWEP tax that is usually locally raised to fund the schools. So for example, last year's SWEP that we collected locally was $1,003,364. The state of New Hampshire is reducing the entire amount that everybody across the state has to pay for SWEP to hopefully provide some pandemic relief. And because of that, this year's SWEP that we need to raise is $695,379. So you'll see this big reduction kind of reflected in everything that's moving forward from this point on. And just to have a visual, I thought this might help. So if you look at anything that's in blue, technically that is what is locally raised, but they consider the bigger blue piece what we fund locally on your local tax bill. The other thing that you see on your tax bill is the SWEP tax, which is this piece of the pie, the darker blue piece of the pie. But technically, those are all local funds. It's just that this piece of the pie doesn't go to the state and back. It's just raised and kept locally. And this is what happened last year. So the orange piece is the adequacy aid. So you can just see that there's a slight shift in this year where we're getting more adequacy from the state because of this SWEP relief. This is a little bit smaller, but we technically raised that's on your local tax bill. It stays about the same, but that's where that reduction is coming from. And I do want to remind everybody, we put it a couple of places in the budget that this is just a one-year tax relief. So there is an expectation that after this year budget, everything will kind of go back to the way that it was before with the SWEP tax rate.
Feel like I get to fun. This segment is about the Blue Ribbon School Board, and last year, Grantham Village School was awarded the Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, one of 325 awards that were given nationally, and one of only 2 schools in New Hampshire that received this award. Winning schools are held out as examples for other schools in the nation. And as a Grantham resident and board member, I'm so proud of the students, the staff, the administration, and the community. And for a second year in the pandemic, this award gave our school much to celebrate. Next slide. This slide shows what it takes to be a Blue Ribbon School. For those of you who need economics, after you see the presentation, I'll read each of the bullets. Each school must have 2 consecutive years of performing in the top 15% of schools on the statewide assessment. All subgroups such as free and reduced lunch, special education must have 40% of students show growth each year. This is a substantial application process and review from the U.S. Department of Ed, including how we navigate the pandemic school community. DPS has really focused on social and emotional learning, and I really believe that is what has helped our children and staff to stay healthy and safe while meeting these academic requirements. The school-wide effort has been especially helpful during the stressful time. Learning looks different, social action, interactions actively navigating differently. Concerns for health are ever present. The dedication of staff, students, parents, administration, and Grantham community, as well as the flexibility to shift these practices when needed to provide our students with the support they need to be successful in such a challenging time. Slide, please. This current data is student assessment is from the 2021 SAS test. And we need to ask when that was actually done this year. I believe it was October. This was in the spring. So the blue indicates GBS student performance, and the orange indicates New Hampshire state average score performance. So if you're unable to see this, for English and language arts, GBS shows a 77% proficiency, while the state average is 50%. For math, GBS scored a 73% proficiency, state average 39%. For science, our GBS students scored a 63% proficiency, state average is 35%. I just want to acknowledge publicly the appreciation for the efforts of our staff and administrators to help our kids to be so successful. These results speak for all of our work. And for every parent who made sure their child was supported in non-traditional learning situation, kept them fed, rested, nurtured, thank you. Learning happens when our children are safe and loved. Volunteer family scholars on committees, dropped into public recess, waited patiently in the parlor. Baby sat when the child had to be home from quarantine. Thank you. I'm really proud of my grandmother and school colleagues.
So I'm going to quickly walk through Article 4, which is the collective bargaining agreement. We've agreed to for starting next year. Currently expires this year. As you'll see, the first slide here talks about the fiscal estimates for the next 3 years. Specifically moves to raise the corporate rate a sum of $129,878 for the current fiscal year. This represents the additional costs attributed to salaries and benefits required to the school board is recommended. Outside of the summary proposed changes, or outside of the fiscal changes for salaries and benefits, we also did some cleaning up of language of tax practices to reflect what we're currently doing. So obviously, as time goes by, things get tweaked. So we cleaned up that language. We also did some cleaning up of the current positions in the CPA. That some new positions in here, which is clarification of existing positions, small table tweaks. We're also including additional pay for para-educators and cover classroom teachers. As we know, over the last couple of years, para-educators have been asked to cover staffing shortages and staff absences. And we've also increased the amount of reports and conference rooms for our staff. And just a quick word out to our staff. I mean, I think we've talked about the blue ribbon and everything that goes along with that. Our staff has put in a tremendous amount of work, especially the last couple of years, every year. Working the way through the pandemic, being here for our students, keeping school open, connecting with our kids and families. Just a big thank you to everyone for the last 2 years. It's certainly been a challenge. I really think we've gone through it best we can. Some of the details of the proposed increases for staffing costs. Professional staff, we're recommending a 2.5% increase over the next 3 years, each year for the next 3 years. Educational support staff for this current fiscal year, 4% increase, and then 2.5% for the next 2 fiscal years. And then food and service and custodians, we're proposing a 5% increase each year for the next 3 years. So the total tax impact of the CBA for 2022, 2023, 24 cents per thousand, $24. You combine this with the operating budget, which saw a decrease of 31 cents per thousand. Overall, we're coming in a 7-cent reduction per thousand. $7 per thousand. Putting the operating budget and this new negotiation.
Just a quick word that when we go into our board meeting, the board will need to have discussion of the anticipated fund balance because that has a direct impact on the tax rates for next year. So right now, with all of these estimates you're seeing tonight, we estimated that on a $375,000 fund, expected fund balance for the next tax rate setting. And there will be 3 options that the board will discuss later on. One would be we could contribute $50,000 to one of our trusts that we save money for, possibly tuition. The board can choose to add that $50,000 to what's already existing and offset the tax rate even more. And then another option, it would be to use funds to encumber these funds to move forward with the pavilion donated by Eaton Barn and for equipment for the playground in June. So that will be discussed a little bit later when we're talking about finalizing the warrant articles and after we present the grounds renovation and playground project. One other thing that the board needs to consider is there are new laws this year about voting on collective bargaining agreements. I just need to ask if you would like to consider a special meeting for the CBA. The language will read, shall the Grantham School District, if Article 4 is defeated, authorize the school board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 4 costs under the school lane. So you don't have to have that article on there, but I just need to ask if that's something that you're interested in doing.
Okay, and then Article 5 of the warrant will be to transact any further business. So that will be, you can stay tuned next month to see what happens with Article 5. So at this point, that ends the formal presentation of the budget by the board. We will open the floor for public comment or input as part of this hearing. So if you do have comments or input that pertain to the budget that was just presented, please feel free to share those with us, folks in the room, or if you are joining us virtually and you'd like to type into the chat. Just a quick reminder, because I know Brenda is hoping that I'll say this to everyone, just a reminder to share your name and address with us at the beginning of your comment. And just as a quick reminder, as I mentioned, that these are comments pertaining to the budget that was presented. There will be another public comment session at the board meeting to follow. So we want to take any input about pertaining to the budget right now. Correct, yes, the budget, any of the warrant articles that we discussed other than the playground bond. The meeting for the playground bond will be next week. So the collective bargaining agreement, the operating budget. And if there are questions about the budget that we can address, we would also take those now as well. I know it's been 2 years of me saying that I want Zoom to have the little like scrolling dots to tell me that someone is typing. They haven't done it yet.
Somebody can also let me know if they want me to bring them in to speak.
Sure, if you would like,
prefer to speak.
yep, if you would like to speak, and you can type into, or let us know that you would like to be brought in to speak for people who are joining us virtually. We'll give a little longer since I know if folks have longer questions, it may take them a little longer to type the whole question in. Your computer has a question about that. We'll give it just one more minute. I would just say thank you to folks that have joined us virtually. We really appreciate folks joining us for this to hear through the budget hearing. Even if you don't have any comments or questions at this point, we appreciate you being here to hear the proposed budget and to hear the next steps of what's coming, like I said, in this busy month ahead of us. Okay, so I don't see any comments coming in. We don't have anyone in the room or the floor that's come forward to speak. So at this point, we will adjourn the public hearing. So we're adjourning the public hearing for the public budget hearing. We are going to continue on and have our February board meeting. So we hope people stay and join us for that. We also hope that you will join us next week for the playground bond hearing, and then for our annual meeting in March. So are we just staying here? We're ready for our meeting?
We're just gonna go right in.
Perfect.
Easier just to stay.
Yes.
there and keep going.
Okay.